Picture this. A child is sent away from a dying place. He lands in a foreign country. He grows up hiding who he truly is, trying to fit in. That's not just a superhero origin story, it's an immigrant story, and it belongs to Superman, one of the most recognizable symbols of American identity, despite not being human at all. Before Superman became a global icon, he was an idea, shaped by two young men trying to make sense of their world. Superman was created in 1938 by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, the children of Jewish immigrants living in the United States. That context matters, because Superman's story begins not with power, but with displacement.
Well, Superman came about because both Joe Shuster and I were great science fiction fans back in the 1930s.
Superman, the high-flying history of America's most enduring superhero, written by Larry Ty. The book details the history of the character of Superman, the history of the creators, and the impact of Superman, rather than a comic book story. Larry argues that Superman reflects the experiences of a second-generation immigrant, navigating identity and assimilation in America. This ultimately presents him as a figure who transforms from an outsider to an insider within American culture. Now that we've established Superman as a long-standing immigrant metaphor rooted in American interpretation, I'm sure it's become clear. Clark Kent represents assimilation into dominant culture, while Superman represents difference and heritage. This dual identity reflects what migration scholars identify as the tension between integration and cultural retention. This aligns with broader theories in migration studies, where immigrants often juggle multiple identities simultaneously. Superman, therefore, is not simply a hero. He is a narrative representation of belonging and otherness. Yet one of the most striking differences between modern-day interpretations of Superman has become, is Superman a god? Or is he one of us? In Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, Superman is framed in deeply mythic, almost religious terms. Visually, the film consistently elevates him with low-angle shots, hovering poses, and a lot of crucifixion poses. At one point in the film, Superman is even shown in a church, positioned beneath a stained glass image of Jesus. Zack Snyder's Superman doesn't just save humanity, he stands apart from it. And that distance matters, because if Superman is a god, he can inspire awe, but not necessarily relatability. Now compare that to 2025's Superman, directed by James Gunn. Gunn deliberately moves away from this divine framing. Instead of asking, what if a god chose to live among us? He asks, what if someone different chose to care? In James Gunn's version, Superman isn't distant, he's present, emotional, grounded. Less symbol, more person.
Am I just demonstrating it? So if I say that's what it is to be human, that feels like I'm trying to prove it still, as opposed to I really know it.
I think there's a little bit of, I mean,
okay,
but because
let me try
because
that.
The emotions are always lingering.
But isn't there something I felt like shit about myself since the recording came out. It's just been like, I don't belong, I'm shit, everything's a lie, I'm not who I thought I was. When is this not the moment where I go, I was wrong to feel that way?
That's exactly where the issue is, right? Because what he didn't tell you was it was wrong to feel that way. There are feelings and there are thoughts. Your feelings about feeling bad are okay. It's not wrong for you to feel that way. You should just, it's not right or wrong anything. None of it is right or wrong. All of it is being vulnerable and being a human being. And in this moment, for you to talk about how it's okay to be vulnerable, you have to be vulnerable, which means showing Lex that your feelings are hurt. In the point when you really shouldn't.
The contemporary superhero film is a book written by Terence Sweeney. First published in 2020, it explores how modern superhero cinema reflects shifts in technology, aesthetics, and cultural identity, positioning the genre as a major force for global popular culture and media convergence. Critically, the book is recognized for bridging academic and popular perspectives on superhero phenomenon. It contributes to film and media scholarship by framing the superhero as not escapist entertainment, but as a cultural form that mirrors and mediates 21st century anxieties and aspirations. It also addresses how franchises such as the MCU or Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Dark Knight trilogy have reshaped audience expectations, production practices, and global box office dynamics. It analyzes the genre's negotiation of power, morality, and identity politics, noting its responsiveness to contemporary social-political context. It's clear the Lannis supports the argument that audiences now prefer relatable heroes over untouchable icons. And that's where the immigrant metaphor becomes stronger, because an immigrant story doesn't work if the character is untouchable. It works when they're vulnerable, uncertain, and unemotionally connected. A god can save the world, but only a person can belong to it. This shift from deity to immigrant isn't accidental. It reflects a deeper cultural change. The early interpretations of Superman represented perfection, authority, and moral certainty, but in the 2020s, those ideas are often questioned. Audiences are more drawn to characters who feel authentic, flawed, and human. So while Snyder asks us to look up at Superman, Gunn asks us to look up with him. And that difference changes everything. Because the immigrant story doesn't resonate when the character feels like a god. It resonates when he feels like a neighbor. James Gunn explicitly describes Superman as an immigrant that came from another place. Rather than focusing on fear and concealment, Gunn emphasizes compassion and moral clarity. This shift reflects principles within cultural studies which suggest that media texts are continually reinterpreted based on the contemporary social values. Cultural studies support the idea that Superman's meaning evolves with the audience's context. In Superman 2025, Superman is placed within a geopolitical conflict between the fictional nations of Baravia and Jahanpur. This conflict is deliberately uneven. Baravia is depicted as a technologically advanced, militarily powerful state with a strong global alliance, echoing the structure of Western-backed powers. In contrast, Jahanpur is portrayed as a less industrialized, with communities more directly tied to land, labor, and local survival. This dynamic mirrors broader global patterns, where conflicts are not simply battles between equals, but are shaped by disparities in military power, international support, and political influence. To Superman, this creates an impossible position. If he aligns with power, he risks reinforcing injustice. And if he defends the vulnerable, he risks being a traitor. This is where Superman as the immigrant metaphor becomes especially significant. He doesn't naturally belong to either side. He's an outsider, navigating a world divided by history, identity, and inequality, forced to make moral decisions without a clear home to anchor him. The relevance of Superman's immigrant identity is closely tied to contemporary global discourse. Debates surrounding immigration, national identity, and belonging have intensified throughout the 2020s. Yet Superman embodies a key contradiction. He's an outsider, yet represents the ideal insider. For decades, Superman was defined by a simple phrase: truth, justice, and the American way. But in recent years, that motto has changed. In 2021, DC Comics officially updated Superman's guiding principle to truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. It's clear that the phrase, the American way, ties Superman to a specific national identity. But a better tomorrow is broader, more global, more inclusive. It reframes Superman not as a symbol of one nation, but as a symbol for everyone. In a time of global migration, cultural blending, and political division, audiences are less interested in heroes who represent a single nation. They're drawn to heroes who represent shared values. And this shift in Superman's motto reflects that change. But what if Superman doesn't grow up in America at all? In Superman Red Son, Superman's rocket lands not in Kansas, but in the Soviet Union. Instead of becoming a symbol for American ideals, he becomes a symbol for Soviet power. In this version, Superman still believes in justice, but what does that justice mean? He doesn't represent individual freedom, he represents state control, order, collective progress, and yet, he's still Superman. Superman isn't inherently American. He's shaped by the world he grows up in. If Superman can represent both the American way and a completely different political system, then his identity isn't fixed, it's adaptable. And that's why A Better Tomorrow works so well, because it reflects a modern understanding of Superman, not as a national symbol, but as a global one. So why does Superman as an immigrant resonate so strongly in the 2020s? Because he reflects a question that still hasn't been answered. What does it mean to belong? From his creation by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, Superman has always been an outsider trying to become an insider. But how that story's been told has changed. In Man of Steel, he felt distant, almost godlike, a figure to look up to but not necessarily relate to. In Superman, he's grounded, an immigrant navigating a divided world, defined not by power, but by compassion. Even beyond film, stories like Superman Red Son prove that Superman is not fixed. Change his environment, and you change what he stands for. And when his motto shifts from truth, justice, and the American way to something broader, it reflects a world that is no longer defined by a single identity. Because Superman doesn't relate in spite of being an immigrant. He resonates because of it. He represents the idea that identity can be multiple, belonging can be chosen, and difference can be a strength. In a world where debating who belongs, Superman's story offers a simple answer: anyone can, if they choose to stand for something bigger than where they came from.